Week 3, Unit 5, Exercise 1. Cooperation is a hallmark of human society. Not merely do people behave considerably toward complete strangers, they sometimes make substantial financial and even physical sacrifices for them. Such behavior seems impossible to explain with classic models of the evolution of altruism where cooperation between unrelated others can arise only when the same individuals interact repeatedly. However, new models of the evolution of human sociality and the results of experiments to test them suggest that a sense of fairness and other foundations of morality have deep evolutionary roots. Such models consider processes at the level of groups of individuals, but without relying on the discredited notion of group selection in which individuals act for the good of the group. Genes promoting prosocial tendencies in individuals can arise when groups compete in ways argued to be characteristic of the early stages of human evolution. In particular, such conditions may have promoted the evolution of strong reciprocity, a tendency to cooperate with anonymous, unrelated others and to punish those who do not do the same, even when doing so is costly to the punisher. Exercise 2. Deforestation drivers are very diverse and vary by countries and states. A number of important studies have attempted to generalize and pull together large numbers of local studies. This work is hampered, however, by the fact that most information on drivers is not quantitative, so that few direct quantitative correlations can be made linking certain quantities of deforestation to particular activities. Angelson and Kamowitz reviewed 140 economic models analyzing the causes of tropical deforestation. They found that when looking at proximate causes, deforestation is often associated with the presence of more roads, higher agricultural prices, lower wages, and a shortage of off-farm employment. Also, they considered it likely that policy reforms associated with economic liberalization and related adjustment increase the pressure on forests. They pointed out, however, that many research studies have adopted poor methodology and low-quality data, which makes the drawing of clear conclusions about the role of macroeconomic factors difficult. Exercise 3. On the one hand, the astonishing success of modern science in predicting and explaining the world seems to justify relying on it and bestowing extraordinary power to scientific institutions, especially in the form of public funding. On the other hand, the dominant societal position of science risks marginalizing alternative forms of knowledge acquisition. It's not clear that there still is a fair competition between science and its alternatives, and it's not straightforward that science has to prove its epistemic superiority in the 21st century in a way comparable to the period of the scientific revolution, 16th to 18th centuries. This is Paul Feyerabend's major argument in Science in a Free Society, which he casts as, today science prevails not because of its comparative merits, but because the show has been rigged in its favor. So Feyerabend insists the fact that science has been the most appropriate means for addressing problems in the past doesn't warrant that it's also the most reliable form of knowledge acquisition for our current and future problems. Exercise 4. A hallmark of immigrant parents that has been found across socioeconomic groups and countries of origin is that first-generation immigrant parents place a high value on the educational achievement of their adolescent children. Immigrant parents tend to view earning good grades, finishing high school, and attending college as the primary means through which their children can establish themselves in their country of destination. Compared to native-born parents with similar education levels, immigrant parents have been found to have higher educational aspirations for their children. Immigrant adolescents internalize their parents' value regarding the importance of education and tend to study more and devote more effort to their schoolwork than do non-immigrant adolescents. During adolescence, immigrants' peer groups often become more segregated from non-immigrants' peer groups, with the immigrant adolescents supporting their peers' academic achievement, particularly for higher SES, socioeconomic status adolescents. Exercise 5. In public speaking, delivery with little or no preparation is called impromptu speaking. You engage in impromptu speaking every day as you communicate thoughts and ideas that spring up in the moment with no preparation or practice whatsoever. For example, when you answer a question in class or speak up during a meeting of a campus organization, you're using impromptu speaking. In this respect, impromptu speaking is simply another way to use the basic communication skills you already have and use regularly. Learning how to express yourself on the spot without relying on research, extensive preparation, or notes will help you do well in your public speaking class and in less structured speaking situations beyond the classroom. In addition, developing your impromptu speaking skills increases your confidence and decreases your speaking anxiety in any presentation context. Exercise 6. In principle, there is an intuitively plausible relationship between profit and team quality. Fans like to watch exciting games where the outcome is uncertain. This is a result of competitive balance between the opponents. Tight, hard-fought games are more fun to watch than lopsided games in which the outcome is never in doubt. However, fans also prefer to see their team win. As a result, attendance should increase with improvement in the team's performance. Presumably, better teams win more than weaker teams. Thus, improved team quality should translate into more wins and therefore increased attendance. With a given set of prices, increased attendance turns into increased revenue from gate receipts, parking, and concessions. This increased revenue should lead to higher profit, but it costs more to field a higher quality team than a lower quality team. Consequently, there is a trade-off and therefore an optimal level of team quality that will vary from team to team depending on variation in the fan base. Exercise 7. The impacts that volcanoes can have on the weather can extend well beyond the eruption site. They are one of the largest drivers of climate change over geological timescales. The vast majority of the 65.5 trillion tons of carbon on Earth is held within rocks. The remainder resides in the oceans, atmospheres, plants, soil, and fossil fuels. Carbon dioxide inside Earth is released continually during volcanic eruptions, And before the Industrial Revolution, volcanoes were the largest source of carbon dioxide entering Earth's atmosphere. However, the release of carbon is largely regulated by the natural carbon cycle, which draws down as much carbon from the atmosphere as volcanoes release into it, acting as a planetary scale thermostat. If temperatures increase due to a period of intense volcanism, more carbon will be drawn down from the atmosphere, which will take temperatures back to the previous levels. However, given the slow rate of some of these chemical reactions, it can take hundreds of thousands of years for the system to stabilize. Exercise 8. Ignacio Warshawski from the Buenos Aires Tango Orchestra El Arranque says in the documentary She Sos Brujo that he and others tried learning from records how the older orchestras did what they did, but it was difficult, almost impossible. Eventually, El Arranque had to find the surviving players from those ensembles and ask them how it was done. The older players had to physically show the younger players how to replicate the effects they got and which notes and beats should be emphasized. So, to some extent, music is still an oral and physical tradition handed down from one person to another. Records may do a lot to preserve music and disseminate it, but they can't do what direct transmission does. In that same documentary, Wynton Marsalis says that the learning, the baton passing, happens on the bandstand. One has to play with others to learn by watching and imitating. For Warshawski, when those older players are gone, the traditions and techniques will be lost if their knowledge is not passed on directly. History and culture can't really be preserved by technology alone. Exercise 9. Teams have many communication technologies at their disposal, ranging from email and chat platforms to web conferencing and video conferencing. People often default to using the tool that is most convenient or familiar to them, but some technologies are better suited to certain tasks than others, and choosing the wrong one can lead to trouble. Communication tools differ along a number of dimensions, including information richness, or the capacity to transfer nonverbal and other cues that help people interpret meaning, and the level of real-time interaction that is possible. A team's communication tasks, likewise, vary in complexity, depending on the need to reconcile different viewpoints, give and receive feedback, or avoid the potential for misunderstanding. The purpose of the communication should determine the delivery mechanism. So carefully consider your goals. Use leaner, text-based media such as email, chat, and bulletin boards when pushing information in one direction. For instance, when circulating routine information and plans, sharing ideas, and collecting simple data. Web conferencing and video conferencing are richer, more interactive tools better suited to complex tasks such as problem-solving and negotiation, which requires squaring different ideas and perspectives. Exercise 10. Animals regularly engage in future-oriented behaviors from nest building to hibernation. Clearly, these behaviors are functionally prospective, but the extent to which they are controlled by cognitive processes remains an open question. Migrating birds, for example, travel long distances to avoid cold winters, without ever having experienced a winter, warmer climates, or the dangers of travel. These birds are unable to know what it is they are avoiding and why this course of action benefits them. Indeed, when two bird populations with different migratory paths are crossbred, the resulting offspring migrate in a direction halfway between that of their parents, suggesting that direction of migration is genetically determined. From this example, we can see that not all prospective behaviors can be considered to involve awareness of the future, but may instead be automatic responses to natural, example, seasonal changes in day length or hormones, or learned cues. Exercise 11. Soil and the plants that grow in it are continually interacting in many ways, both directly and through the effects of the many kinds of bacteria, fungi, and other small organisms that are always present. Most notably, plants are continually dropping leaves and other parts which fall to the ground to rot in place where they release their nutrients, although in some drier climates, lightning-set fires are necessary to liberate the mineral nutrients present in the plant litter. In any case, most of the nutrients present in dead plant material end up locally in the soil, while the vast networks of plant roots and fungal threads join with bacteria, lichens, and sticky humus to effectively hold the soil together even in the face of heavy rains and strong winds. The result is effective and continuous recycling of plant nutrients, which are capable of moving back and forth between the soil and plants almost indefinitely. Soil is also a vast storehouse for the seeds and spores produced by the local plants, a key factor in allowing vegetation to regenerate following disturbance. Exercise 12. When Darwin developed his theory of natural selection, he imagined evolution unrolling on geological timescales. The way a glacier sculpts a valley or weather beats on a rock, so time molds one species into another. Such was the conventional wisdom for over a century. But in the late 20th century, our understanding of evolution started to change, thanks in no small part to the continuing study of the Galapagos finches that Darwin himself had observed on the voyage of the Beagle. It turns out that evolution works far more quickly than Darwin imagined. The finches of the Galapagos evolve on timescales we can observe. In 1983, for instance, a year with superabundant rainfall, a species of vine with tiny seeds overran the flora of Daphne Island. The birds with the smallest and pointiest beaks were suddenly and distinctly advantaged. Their genes rapidly spread. Selection for traits can happen over the course of years or decades, not just eons. And Darwin's finches are exemplary, not exceptional. They are a privileged case of the paradigm that the biologist John Thompson has called relentless evolution.